Well, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time to dial into this webinar. We're very excited to be here. We'll start with just a quick round of introduction. I'll introduce myself, and then I'll let my colleague Innocent and Peggy introduce themselves as well. So my name is Sebuh Haileleul. I lead what we call the Custom Experience Engineering team for Security Copilot. Been working on Security Copilot for over a year and a half now, and truly excited to share some of the innovation work we've been doing and talk to you about what Security Copilot is all about.
All right, and my name is Innocent. In the Security Copilot Customer Experience Engineering team, and I'm focused on the third-party plugin ecosystem, and excited to be here to answer your questions.
And I'm Peggy Pinello-Merchon. I'm in the same team as Innocent, working with Security Copilot customers, and here with you today to help answer any questions that you have.
Okay. All right. We'll move over the slides. Innocent, if we can move the slides to. So a couple of things that I wanted to do is just go through a little bit of content, give you some context in terms of where we are from a Security Copilot perspective, some of the announcements we've made that are either in public preview or in generally available. And then Innocent is going to also share some stuff around some of our third-party integration. And then I want to try and save some time because at the end of the day, this is an M&A, right? We want to be able to help you answer questions, and hopefully that this is the first of the many sessions that we're going to do, depending on the topic of your interest. Okay. Having said that, then let me shift to gears to all up security and then Security Copilot. So we're in a world where I think from a security perspective, defenders need sort of a new approach. And that's really a combination of many different things. You've got an increase in sophisticated threats and sophisticated attacks. We see lots of volumes of alerts and incidents that customers have to contend with on a daily basis. And then on average, customers have 50 plus products from a security perspective, and making all of that integrated, working together is cumbersome and takes a lot of time. And then there's also, compliance needs, regulation needs that organizations that really need to stay on top of. And then what's compounding that problem is also the lack in expertise or expertise shortage in security domain specifically, right? And then you add that with some of the siloed solutions and some of the level of stress you're seeing in the security domain because of the volume of attacks. We believe that it is important for defenders who are at the front line defending their organization's data and assets, they need to take on a new approach. Now we can move the slide. This is where I think Security Copilot comes in, right? Security Copilot has this amazing ability where it uses generative AI to be able to look at all your data sources across Microsoft ecosystem. It looks at across all the third-party products, and it's actually able to reason across all these data sets and be able to come and tell security personnel so they're able to understand the end-to-end attack story. Today, lots of people who are dealing with threats on a daily basis, particularly, for example, in SOC scenario, don't necessarily catch everything. And they're also worried at the same time, like, how do I make sure that I am prioritizing and working on the most severe or critical alerts or incidents that I need to work on to make sure that my organization is protected? At the same time, they're also expected to respond faster, right? Because of the volume of attacks they see coming. And then equally to that is helping them also strengthen and improve their overall security posture. And this is where I think that Security Copilot has this unique ability, leveraging the Gen AI to be able to reason across all these first party, third party, and be in a position where security personnel are able to understand the end-to-end attack story and be able to make effective decisions. Now, where did we start? When we started our journey from a solution perspective, we were heavily focused on the SOC scenarios. So how does AI, how particularly junior SOC analysts, senior SOC analysts, how do they take an incident and enrich that incident with threat intelligence, and then evolving that over into a lot of automation? Today, from a product perspective, if you work with Security Copilot, great. If you've not, strongly encourage you to do so, to try it. We've invested a lot in improving the experience around what we call an embedded experience, right? This is Security Copilot lighting up within the Microsoft XDR, within Intune, within Purview, within Entra. And then we've evolved over time to help, security personnel from an automation perspective. Because this is one area I think that a lot of customers of ours have told us that they want to be able to automate more, and Security Copilots using prompts, which is a chain of prompts all packaged together, are able to leverage that to be able to respond faster. Then we've sort of expanded beyond the security operations of a day-to-day, going particularly into the compliancy, into Purview with data security admin, and then expanding that also to cloud protection with MDC, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And we're going to continue to evolve and make sure that we continue to light up new use cases and new scenarios that actually help meet customers where they are, focused on automation, focused on the embedded experience, as we move forward and now get into this AI world of agents. You've had lots of talk, we've made lots of announcements, and I'll talk about it here just in a second, some of the agents that we've announced recently. This slide sort of brings it all together for me, right? We talk about the defendant, particularly if you look at incident summarization, where today with lots of incidents, but the volume of alerts that customers are getting, we're taking that data that's uncorrelating and correlating that data together and summarizing it so that SOC analysts are able to make decisions faster and are able to focus on the key priority ones. We've automated, we continue to integrate. We're seeing customers use Logica, for example, to connect and integrate Security Copilot and use lots of automation. We're enriching incidents with unified threat intelligence, and then we've evolved into the world of using agents, where we're going to see lots and lots of excitement things coming out across all our security portfolio. Now, some of the things that we've been working on, these are based on our learnings and working with customers and working with partners as well, is that there's this need to have persona-based prompt library. So we started with just prompts, and then we've refined them over time to make sure that we've curated them so they're really focused on personas. The second part was that we got feedback that, hey, we want more transparency, we want more visibility around how I'm consuming, how I'm using my ACU, Secure Compute Unit. And so we've built dashboard, we made that available to customers. Audit logs, which we all know it's a no-brainer. Lots of customers and everybody said it's important for us to be able to see and track, even from a compliance perspective, what people are doing, what are the prompts, what are the responses they're getting. So we've announced audit logs. And then the last one is also around multi-workspace, right? Because organizations said, hey, we would love to have the capability where I can provision capacity according to the different department needs and not just have sort of this blanket. So this is in private preview, actually. We should be going to public preview soon. But this is also another area where customers have said that they want to be able to have where different departments sort of are able to absorb their own cost for the day-to-day security work they do. We've also gone use cases beyond SOC, like I talked about it a little earlier, particularly around data security administration in Microsoft Purview. Lots of work we're doing around data security posture management, basically bringing what DLP, data loss prevention, is doing, and MIF with Microsoft Information Protection and information rights management, combining that and giving customers the ability to see their data security posture, which is, I think, super, super valuable. Lots of work we're doing to continue to advance our embedded experience in Microsoft Intune. There's also agents we're releasing in that space. And then lastly, also same thing with Intra, right? With conditional access, user risky behavior, are just some of the use cases that we've lit up, and we're going to continue to innovate in that space as well. From an integration beyond Microsoft to third party, and I know Innocent will talk a little more about that. We've got, we're continuing to work with more SVs. We're continuing to work with third party, 15 new partner plugins, which are available in the standalone as part of the product. We've enabled plugin management so that security administrators and the ability to be able to actually control who can access on which plugin, depending on their persona. Certification was also one of those things that we were told is very important because particularly in healthcare, or in financial, in government space, that you need to have the necessary certification. So this is a journey we're on. By no means we're saying this is all the certification. We're continuing to evaluate which are the ones that we need to comply and make sure that Security Copilot has those certifications, so we're able to meet customer needs as well. From a growing partner ecosystem perspective, again, I won't call out, all these companies, but we've been very fortunate to partner with these lots of companies across so many domains in security, and that's an area that we're going to continue to grow with 52 service partners, 96 independent software vendors that are actually working on building solutions that are going to currently integrate with Security Copilot, and also third-party plugins, with 30 of them already available in production, which is super exciting. And we know customers just don't use Microsoft security solutions. They use other third party. So it is important for us to make sure we continue to integrate and partner with the security ecosystem out there. Okay, I know I went maybe a little too fast there. Innocent will talk about some of the work we're doing a little bit with agents, and recent announcement we made also with Plugin, which is, again, talk about meeting where customers they are. So this is one of the areas that we were very keen to make sure we get Security Copilot integrated, because we know customers also use Splunk as their SIEM solution. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Innocent.
Yeah, thanks, Sebuh, for laying that groundwork. Yeah, so moving along, here are some key recent announcements that we've made that we think will be interesting to you folks. Agents, obviously, lots of talk about agents. We have 11 of them. 6 are first party from Microsoft, 5 are from our partners. I'll go into a little bit more depth on them in a bit. And then we have the Splunk plugin. So what's new with our Splunk plugin is that now it's developed by Cisco themselves, and we've also made a couple of enhancements to it. And we also have the new billing model that allows for overage, another item that had been highly requested by you, our customers. So a quick overview of what you get with the Splunk plugin is that it allows you to run search jobs. So you're able to, from the standalone experience, you can execute a search into Splunk. You can retrieve alerts that have been fired. You can also create searches. You can retrieve searches. You can dispatch searches from Security Copilot as well. You can also acknowledge them and also find out their suppression state. And of course, you can also search for events. One interesting development that's just coming up is, first of all, for this new plugin that Cisco built, we extended the authentication options. So initially we had basic logs, basic auth only. So now we have token-based authentication. So very important there. That's a new development that we brought into that plugin. And then also we are just in the process of releasing some guidance to enable on-premises support for Splunk instances that are either on-premise or they could be the self-hosted VM ones. So, by default, Security Copilot will work with SaaS applications, but using our Entra ID application proxy and Azure application gateway and web application firewall, we are going to soon publish a guidance on how you can bring along your on-prem instances of Splunk. And that guidance also generally applies to any other on-prem solution that you have a plugin for. All right, on to the agents. So as I said, we released 11 of them. The fish triage agent, that's the first one that really speeds up the triage process. It looks at the user submitted fish. You probably know this is a big problem. End users are always submitting fish reports on things that are either credible, some are not, but there's no way to tell. You have to look at pretty much all of them and figure out what is going on. So this really helps to cut down that time. It is in preview right now. Same thing with the alert triage for DLP. So really reduces that time that it takes to figure out what's important, what's the priority, what should I start to focus on. Conditional access is also a really great agent there we've got as well. And what it does is that it looks at new objects, applications, users, and finds out, are they compliant to the policies? Which ones should you be prioritizing to remediate, and gives you guidance on what to prioritize. Vulnerability remediation, it's also another one that looks at your specific environment. It works closely with Defender vulnerability management, and then looks at the posture of your assets, and then gives you some guidance on what should you prioritize in terms of addressing the vulnerabilities. The threat intelligence briefing one, this is geared towards giving you a comprehensive threat bulletin, probably on a daily basis. So looks at the external surface and the internal surface, and then gives you an idea of what are the priority threats that you should be concerned about. So that's on our first party side. On the third party or our partner ecosystem, we have the privacy breach response from OneTrust. And what this one does is that in case you have a breach, you give it some details, high-level details about the breach, maybe the number of people that have, you probably have privacy breaches around, the locations they are in, and what it will do, it will look at the breach situation, and it's going to give you guidance on what should you do about that breach, like who should you notify, what is needed for the different jurisdictions that may be involved. And it will also go and create a task within the OneTrust portal itself of the things that you should take care of. So giving you a good head start right there. The Blue Voyant one, this is more generic. It's applicable to anybody that has Sentinel. And what it does is that it tracks the health state of your Sentinel deployment. And if there's something wrong that you need to pay attention to, you get a report that summarizes the current state of your Sentinel deployment. And the idea is to really make sure that you don't lack any data that is useful, that is needed for you to conduct your investigations efficiently. Network Supervisor from Aviatrix. This is another interesting one. What it does is that it monitors site-to-site VPNs, gateways, and if there's an outage, it will either tell you that there is an outage. It can go further and suggest some policy changes, or it can even make those policy changes by itself. So that's what the Aviatrix one does. Alert triage from Tenium. It also brings some autonomy into the alert triage process. So looks at initial alerts and then decides what additional information is needed, goes out and gets them for you, and speeds up that process of triage. The last one is from Fletch. Pretty interesting. What this one does is that based on the integrations that you have in the source system, so the Fletch itself, what it will do on a daily basis is that it gives you summarized list of your priorities. So it looks at the alerts, looks at the threat intelligence from the external world, matches those together, and tells you, hey, this is based on the alerts that we are seeing in Defender, in Sentinel, elsewhere, any of the connected sources. It's going to suggest a short list of what you should prioritize. So pretty cool tool there with the agent working alongside it. And then here, before we go into the submitted questions, we also recently announced our overage model. So previously, what would happen is that if you provisioned SEUs and then you went beyond that capacity, then you'd be throttled. So that would affect your experience, it would affect your ability to continue to conduct investigations. So we had your feedback, and we came up with the overage model, which allows you to provision the SEUs and then specify a limit to which you would like to overage, and basically go above the provision limit on the basis of the demand at certain times. So that's the flexibility you now have, and we are excited to bring it to you and happy to continue getting your feedback on how that's going. So with that, now we will go over to your submitted questions. I'm going to start with this one here. Pretty interesting one, and if the person that submitted it, I'd actually be interested in hearing more about it. But you're asking, how can we leverage Security Copilot to bolster our non-business hours defenses? So I think this has to do with how you are operating today. It seems to me that during the day, you can handle certain items, certain incidents, you can take certain actions. But of course, the way Copilot works is that it doesn't necessarily take corrective or remediative action. So you have to build that into a logic app. So depending on your level of comfort, so let's say if certain incidents are triggered, you're happy to go and manually disable an account. You could build those kinds of automations within Copilot, well, with the Logic App and Copilot, such that if a verdict is reached that this is a potential identity breach or something like that, then you could go ahead and take the action of block the user. Whatever you're comfortable with that would happen while you're asleep. It's something you can do. So it depends on the way you approach it. But if you're here on the call, happy to get more details on this, and if that answers your question. Or there's anyone else from my team with additional insights to share, feel free to jump in here while we wait for the person who asked the question to own up. Okay, if not, we are going to go over to the next question. So when will you have native integrations into data sources outside Sentinel? I think we have shown you that list of partner ecosystem that's growing today. We have 33 of them. It is growing not just on the plugin side, but also on the agent side. So that's going to continue to grow. I think the question always is, which specifically do you want to see? I'm assuming here you're saying that you want API-based connections versus Sentinel-based KQL plugins. Again, if you're here on the call, happy to have you give us some more details on that.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just add to what Innocent said, right? I think with Sentinel, we worked with them. With Splunk. We worked with them very closely to have integration via APIs. But and this is based on customer feedback that we got saying this is one of the areas we would love to see Security Copilot integrated with. But if there are other SIEMs or other solutions that we should be looking at, we would love to get the feedback, and then we can follow up internally to make sure that this is something that we can make available to all of you. So what would help us is what other solutions or what other products should we be looking at from an integration perspective?
Sure. All right. So yeah, and feel free to drop them in the chat. Happy to take that feedback and look into it. So the third one here is, does it make more sense to use Copilot in embedded experience versus standalone? So this embedded experience is obviously preferred because it is natural. I mean, you see it right there in the portal, and that's one of the reasons why it exists in the first place, because we want to reduce that friction to adoption. So we want to bring as much of the Copilot experience into the tools that you're already accustomed to using, whether that is Defender, that's Entra, Intune, and the like, and even considering extending that out to third parties as well. So that's definitely like the preferred path, but the reality is that there will be other use cases that are not supported within embedded experiences. So like if you were to access third-party plugins, you would have to go out to the standalone experience. To simplify that experience, we are adding things like prompt books so that it's more of an automated experience right there. Same thing with Logic Apps. Rather than you having to kickstart items manually, Logic Apps can kick in and perform certain actions on the basis of certain triggers. So there is a place for the standalone experience, and mostly it's to do with accessing the third-party plugin ecosystem, which is an important part of your investigations, and components such as prompt books and Logic Apps as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to just keep in mind, the vision. So one, where we want people to really start when using Security Copilot is from the embedded experience perspective. Number two, what we've focused on from building capabilities within the embedded is how do we complement existing customer workflows? How do partners do their work? Irrespective of which domain, whether it's an IT admin, whether it's a SOC, or whether it's somebody that's focused on compliance using Purview, right? Is understanding those existing workflows and how do we simplify and make that as effective as possible. If you look at XDR, or if you spend a lot of time in the Defender portal, we know that SOC analysts spend enormous amount of time triaging incidents. And then an incident could have 100, 150 alerts. And I think on average, it takes about 30 minutes to, I believe, to solve an incident. And what then Security Copilot does is it comes in and goes through all the alerts and then summarizes that so that the SOC analyst doesn't have to spend time reading or swifting through each of that. And then we also provide, depending on the incident, guided responses and clear action items that a SOC analyst can do, including classifying the incident, whether true positive, is it a malware, is it a ransom, and so forth, right? So I think that the Uber point here is that we want to be able to help augment and support existing customer workflows so that they can get their job faster, be able to respond faster, be more effective, and then that frees up capacity for them to go and focus on more complex tasks where they get better use of their time.
You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was saying, yes, that is the last question we had pre-submitted. So now we go into ask us anything. And I'm going to fall back here and focus on the chat window now. But go ahead and ask your questions. I think, Jason, if there's anything you want to voice over, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, the team's been great with answering questions. We do have a good amount that still need to be answered. So I'll just start with the first one. Can we put Security Copilot into the Lighthouse tenant and use the 3 SCUs to reach into our client's tenants?
Well, at the end of the day, it's just like any other sizing exercise. So it's not necessarily, well, I would assume you would need more. I mean, 3 is what is like our baseline recommendation for just one customer. So now if you're talking about multiple, I would expect that you would need more. But it's really at the end of the day, a typical sizing exercise of how much usage is expected.
Great, thank you. We did have a question that came in, says, does Security Copilot licensing work in those situations? I'm not sure what situations you're referring to, so if you could put in the chat what those are. But Innocent, is that something you could answer generally, or should we wait for more information?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What?
The question was, does Security Copilot licensing work in those situations? I was hoping the person who asked that could elaborate on what situations they're referring to.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not able to unless I get those details.
Okay, cool. We'll wait for that. The next one is, are there ways we can also leverage Copilot for pen test?
Okay, so again, remember the current design of Copilot, it doesn't take state change actions. What it can do though is to assess some postures, assess posture. So depending on whether you have connectivity to as a data source or an environment. So for example, Defender for Cloud could be a good example of that. It depending on the connected sources you have, it can look through and say, okay, these are the recommendations we are making. So to that extent is how Copilot can be helpful, but it's not going to execute a test against an environment unless you put that within a logic app. But I don't see why you would want to do that. Maybe in terms of analyzing some output, that could be useful, but executing the commands that would bring back the output, probably not.
Okay, great. The next one is, I have custom analytics rules. They run against customers' workspaces via Lighthouse. Can Copilot analyze them and suggest performance improvements?
It can do that, but that's really a generic LLM problem in my view. It's only that Copilot maybe might be able to do it within the context of your tenant and maybe keeping the data within that tenant. But really, yes, you can use it, of course. Right now, it's not configured in such a way that it would look at your rules and then automatically give you recommendations on how you can improve them. But if you took a rule and you pasted it within the standalone and asked for optimizations around it, yes, for sure, you will be able to get it on the KQL basis. It should be able to tell you this is what you can do. But it's really a direct LLM problem. It's not necessarily Security Copilot or security skills being used there. It's probably the generic skill that would give you that answer. I also know that on the Sentinel side, there are native capabilities that exist to give you some ideas, some general recommendations around optimization. But if you're looking for very specific and maybe high impact optimizations, I think taking that KQL of a given rule as Copilot stands today, pasting it within the standalone and asking questions such as, or prompts such as, look at this detection rule and give me ideas as to how I can improve it, make it more efficient. You should be able to get a reasonable answer for that. But if you're asking about making this kind of a more native experience, that's not yet available, but I believe the Sentinel team could be doing some work towards that end, because it makes more sense for that to happen on that side of the window pane.
Great, thank you. The next one is the SOAR feature essential to make use of Security Copilot?
It is good. It's not it's not a hard and fast requirement, and in our case, you see logic apps. That's our kind of our native SOAR capability. So yes, it does help in many cases. So let's say you have defined certain detection rules in Sentinel, and then you attach automation rules to those detections and say, if this one's ever triggered, I want this specific logic app that submits a bunch of prompts into Security Copilot to be executed. So that's a good example of where you would say SOAR does complement Security Copilot as a generative AI-based security solution. It just depends on your level of comfort with taking automated actions. So that will determine that. And when agents come, of course, that's going to make it even much easier because they will be embedded within products. If you think about the fish triage agent, how it works, it doesn't wait to be triggered by a logic app. It's triggered by an alert natively.
Great, thank you. The next question is there an additional cost associated with integrating Copilot security into Purview?
I mean, I just responded to that one, and
okay.
Yeah, and you don't, because Security Copilot is already available within Purview, right? Today it can do summarization, for example, for DLP and IRM, right? And we're going to continue to add more capability. Agents are coming. We're building agents for DLP, as Innocent showed earlier. So there is no additional cost that's involved. Security Copilot is enabled within Purview in itself.
Great, thank you. Next question is, can Copilot remediate custom rule alerts?
Okay, so Copilot doesn't remediate any alert. So you would have to configure some logic that looks at the rule, makes a determination, and then you would have to create a logic app step that now intervenes to remediate whatever you want remediated. But Copilot is not designed to take state change actions at the moment.
Great.
The agents are starting to do that. That's for sure. I mean, from what I already shared with you earlier on, you can start to see some actions being taken under certain guardrails, but that's the situation with Copilot natively. Without any additional automation, it's not going to take a state change action.
Great. The next question is, what is the difference between a plugin and an agent?
Yeah, very good question. A plugin extends the functionality of Security Copilot by bringing in data from a source system. So let's take an example of Splunk or Defender. An agent is different in that it has got some level of autonomy. So it looks at the data that has come in and it's able to make some decisions within boundaries that, okay, I've seen this a lot. I don't just follow a predetermined script of what I should do. So that's one. The other one is recursive operation, which means it based on the output of either a previous step or the initial data that came in, it can take a different path from what it took the previous day or the previous event. And then also the agent has the ability to learn. So strictly speaking, a plugin is simply a pipe. It brings in data from a source system, and then it puts that data through the large language model, and the large language model will do some enrichment, some Gen AI enrichment onto it. But an agent has those other three capabilities. It has got some recursive reasoning, meaning it, depending on what is happening, it can take a different path, and it has some level of autonomy, and it has an ability to learn, meaning it has long-term memory. You know how plugins work in the context of LLMs. When the data comes in, it gets into a session, you do the work you're doing. Once that session is over, that's it. The Copilot will not remember, or any LLM that's working in the same fashion is not going to remember what happened. So that's the short-term memory that it has there compared to an agent that can have some long-term memory of how did you handle this fish in the past. For example, if you look at that specific fish triage agent, it does have an ability of being trained, meaning you can tell it that, okay, if you see this type of email, this email is just regular training for phishing, don't bother. So next time it sees, it's not going to say this is a true positive. So that's an example of that's a clear distinction between agent and plugin. But to be honest, they're not really comparable, because a plugin is really a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. The end is to bring the data into the LLM for reasoning. So maybe the comparison should actually be between a traditional LLM and an agent versus a plugin.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can we select billing between provisioned and Pro Plus overage?
Can you select billing between provisioned
and Pro Plus overage?
Pro?
Let's
You
see
mean
what the,
PRO?
PRO, yeah.
Wow, I'm not
yeah.
familiar with the Pro
Can you
aspect
give us
of
more?
that.
I mean, whoever, if they can give us a little more context on the, I'm not familiar with the Pro Plus. What that? Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll wait for them to provide more info. The next question is it possible to call Copilot via an API endpoint, i.e. send data to Copilot via Logic app and have it summarize the data and return an output?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't yet made that available. The API is not publicly available yet. So we have gotten that request many times, and it's under consideration.
Great, thank you. The next question is, what is the licensing model, i.e. what is the requirement on Copilot for security license?
We don't actually have a licensing requirement. Anybody can buy Security Copilot. There's no requirement to own Security Copilot or to subscribe.
Okay, great. The next one is, as an MSSP, how will Copilot work when hosting the SCUs in our home tenant if we use the Defender multi-tenant feature?
I think overall on that, we'll come back with more insight, because they still, that hasn't been finalized, like in how we're going to support MSSP. It's a great question. There's still some work to be done, and yeah, and my plan is actually to have more of these sessions, like agents, and just take different kind of topics, MSSPs and so forth, and then we'll come back with more clarity on that one.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can you make it an option to set the SCU to only be provisioned during core office hours? Currently, we are having to use Logic apps to provision and deprovision at set times.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have that capability built in yet.
Okay, great. The next question is, can we disable the automatic summarization of Defender incidents? I would like to use limited SUs more wisely.
So it's a feedback we've heard very loud and clear. We've taken steps to do that from an Intune perspective. There's some work that's happening. We will have, we'll come back with more clarity because we've gotten feedback that customers really want to have control in how they use those SCUs, right? Which is completely understandable. And we're trying to come up with a solution that actually meets that requirement.
Great. The next question is, what do I install the agent to monitor for security incident and network incidents within the Sentinel environment?
Okay, so today, if you're talking about the third-party agent I referred to earlier on, the one from BlueVoyant, so you deploy an ARM template that will be supplied, which installs the rules that are needed on the Sentinel side. It uses some detection rules on the Sentinel side. And then there are some skills that are also uploaded into Copilot. So that's the agent part of it. There's a YAML file that would bring in that capability. Although in preview, that's how it's happening. But later on, it's going to be a very streamlined experience. You would go to some portal, you would see the agent's name, you would click on deploy, and it's going to take care of all those things in the backend. But as it stands today, it's an ARM template that will deploy the rules that this agent needs to detect whether something has gone wrong, and then skills that it chooses depending on what it's looking for.
Great. The next question is, we are currently using logic apps and function apps for automated phish analysis. How exactly can the agent-based solution replace our existing solution?
Yeah, that was actually the inspiration for the phish triage agent. So the agent is going to be natively built within MDO. So it looks at the alerts as they come in, and it starts to work on them. It looks at the characteristics. It partners with automated investigation and response, the built-in capability in Defender. So that's the next evolution of our logic apps, because if you think about it, it's a native experience. It is 100% supported by Microsoft. The logic app and function apps is kind of up to you, or if you're referring to the famous one that's published in GitHub, that's kind of in an open source type of mode, meaning there's really no responsibility to maintain it, to upgrade it and support it and stuff like that. So yeah, the agent is that evolution into building these experiences natively, making them more efficient, and having them be more integrated to the AI component. But that doesn't stop you, of course, from if you still want to build your own functions, build your own logic apps, that's something that you can continue to do. But one of the reasons why we're building agents is to move one step above automation and bring, because if you think about it, agents are already covering the automation piece. They have triggers just like logic apps, but they bring much more value in terms of the ability to reason, ability to be flexible, and ability to learn.
Great, thank you. The next question is, does the 3 SCU minimum vary at all? Does tenant size matter, i.e. under 500 users?
Yeah, sorry to give this canned answer that it's really depends on the sizing. Again, you have to look at what do you intend to do. The number of users might not necessarily be a determinant, because it's not like a typical productivity tool where everybody gets a license and they use it. I mean, a SOC is typically staffed by a few people, so 10, 15. So they're the ones who are going to use it. And then the question is, what are they going to use it for? Automation? How many incidents are they getting? Are they using the automated summaries and stuff like that? So there's a lot that goes into the sizing, but just the sheer number of users does not necessarily indicate the SUs. But of course, it does have an influence, because if you have more users, ideally probably have more user-reported phish, for example.
Yeah, I think looking at the use cases would be a good way to go at it. If you look at what are the use cases, what's the problem you're trying to solve, then that could give you a better accurate sizing versus just looking at number of users. Because people could just be using the product, and of course, which will spin the meters, but then probably not achieving what you want. But the use cases can really sort of guide you in terms of how best to utilize Copilot.
Great, thank you. The next question is, what about the security controls of the agents such as Entra and RBAC? Do we treat the agents as a human in terms of access controls and execution of enterprise tasks?
Yes, depending on the particular agent, yes, the agent will have an identity, and the idea is to be able to scope them down. So to the least privilege. That's one of the principles that we are using as we build the agent. So we want least privilege, we want zero trust. So the identity that the agent gets ideally should be mapped to or match the permissions or the rights that a human being who would be doing a similar task would have. So for example, the phishing one, if the human being today has certain rights to be able to do a certain task, you can expect that the agent should have, at a minimum, similar permissions.
Great. The next question is, how do we exactly install the agents?
So in the preview state, it's different, and it's script based for some of them. Once it goes fully live, there's gonna be a more in UI experience. So you would go to the UI and just turn it on if you'd like to, and then that's it. There wouldn't be like an installation type of process. For the third party ones, yeah, you would go somewhere. Sorry.
No, I think I responded to that earlier. That when you go, like for example, in the embedded experience, you will see it there. It's usually on the landing page. We want to make it where it's very easy from a discoverability perspective, and then sort of have a wizard that you just click. And again, we can do another time. We can do a session just focused on agents, and we can pick either Defender or Entra, and also bring the folks who are driving those product with customers in engineering to come and walk through those steps as well and show you. But the goal is to make it easily available when you land into the product, and use like sort of click wizard to be able to launch an agent.
Great. The next question is, what is the best way to showcase end-to-end flow security Copilot to clients? E.g., are there any demo environments available to partners?
Not very familiar with that space. I don't believe we have like demo environments themselves. We do have resources. We have an offline type of demo environment we call Zamada. I don't know that you're familiar with it. So it doesn't consume any SUs. Unfortunately, it's a bit restricted, meaning you cannot just pivot based on questions someone asks. So that's a kind of limitation with it. But that, as far as I know, is available to partners. And then there's other types of resources that the partner team makes available to the partner organizations.
Okay, great. The next question is there an easy path to get Security Copilot to be able to look at data we have in a data lake, e.g. firewall logs?
Okay, I think there could be. So we do have a plugin for Azure Data Explorer. So that can take in historical data, lots of data like the firewall logs at a lower price. So that is something that can be easily done. I think the ADX plugins are pretty easy to build, relatively easy to build. So that's what that comes to my mind, how you could use that. If the data lake is some other third-party data lake, then you would have to build a custom plugin that would tap into that data. But for sure, you can do that with Azure Data Explorer.
Great. The next question is, what's the recommended minimum and maximum usage for Copilot for security in a typical company?
So,
one is, we don't have data that tells us this is the maximum, right? There It just depends. It really depends. There are some customers that use it a whole bunch a lot on a daily basis, and there's some who use it less than others, right? And so it's very hard to say, like, here is a profile of a company that uses it a lot, and here is a profile of a company that uses it less than the others.
Okay, great. The next one is, where do we find the sizing for SCUs per tenant?
So I don't think that information is available
Yeah.
like in advance. If you're talking about per tenant, then you'd have to be using it already, and then you'd use the usage dashboard to see that. But if you're talking about like forecasting the sizing or the cost by looking at your tenant, there is no way to do that today.
And again, the best way to get started is, you can start with just one ECU if you like. Just provision one ECU, and that can get you going. And then please reach out to us if you need help in terms of sizing and what is it that you want to achieve, and we can certainly support with that as well.
Great. The next question is, at non-working hours, I deprovision SCUs for saving money, but all SCU usage data will be deleted. Can you keep SCU usage data even if capacities are deleted?
Yeah, I answered that already. We are not able to do that yet, but it's something to explore.
Okay, great. The next question is, can you share a sample of comprehensive automation workflow using Logic App with Security Copilot connector?
I would really encourage folks to go to our GitHub repo. We have lots of, my team has put lots of content out there. You could just go search for Security Copilot GitHub repo and it should show up, and we can share it as well. There's lots of tools, lots of content that we've put out there across all the, all the first-party products. We put information out there around Logic apps, use cases that really resonated with customers. So that would be a good place to get started.
Great. Next question is a two-parter. It is there a way for the security team to review what folks are entering in Copilot, thinking of DLP and ensuring PII data isn't being entered, etc.? If it is discovered that PII data has been entered in Copilot, what steps are there to remove or scrub it?
All right, so today we do have the audit capabilities, and I think the request we got from customers is that they do not want prompt details to be seen. So although I think there's a second request that's in the pipeline that will enable customers to see. So today you can see who submitted a prompt, and I think you can see you're not able to see the prompt that was submitted. You're just able to see who submitted the prompt. And that's kind of part of privacy, but we are getting requests that customers want to see what was the prompt that was actually submitted. In terms of the content itself, I think that is a separate solution from the Purview AI side. Unfortunately, I'm not so clued up with it yet, how exactly it works, but that would be a different solution that would be able to look at the content of the prompts and be able to block it or to prevent it from being submitted to the large language model.
Great. We're kind of out of time, so we'll just do one more question and then proceed with the outro. Can we use Copilot for validating DLP rules in Microsoft Purview, assisting in tuning the current DLP policy setup to confirm whether it is properly set up with proper priority, etc.?
When we don't do the tuning yet, right? We're doing the summarization because customers tell us that they get lots of signals and then they want to be able to know which ones to prioritize and focus on. We're doing that now, but it's just a natural evolution that we're going to focus on how to help or how to better fine-tune that.
Great.
And I think there
Thank-
was a question on the, sorry, I believe Innocent answered it on the audit. Like on Purview audit, you can see the prompts that the user has submitted, because this is, again, to what Innocent said, this is something that customers have, from a compliance, particularly those in heavily regulated, they want to be able to understand what people are submitting and what are the kind of responses they get back. So in the audit, you are able to see that.
Great. So we're at time. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Sebuh and Innocent, for being our guests and for sharing the
Peggy.
great information with our community.
And Peggy as well.
And Peggy as well. Also, thank you to the Q&A team who helped us with answering the questions and providing the resourceful information. To all the listeners still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desire to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. Together, we can make a global impact. So join us at aka.ms/securitycommunity. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.